All right, so if you're watching this video, I am going to be going over the study guide for Unit 3 science test. I decided that I am not going to be writing out the answers onto the assessment, the study guide, because the whole point is I want the kids to, well, I want you guys to be able to search for your answers and not just use my copy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk it out with you guys. Maybe show you guys some pages in the workbook that might be helpful, but really I want you guys to be the ones that are in charge of, because the study guide is pretty much almost a harder look of what the test is going to look like. So I basically made the study guide with test questions, but the test questions are a lot easier, and then obviously you have multiple choice and stuff. But because you guys get to use your study guide and you guys get to use the workbook for the test, I don't want to give you guys the answers on paper, so I'm going to just go over the answers verbally with the video, and then this is a really good time for you guys to like take notes on whether it's your notebook or if your parents printed out that paper. I'm going to leave that up to you guys, but yeah, we're going to go ahead and get into it. I've already done mine, so hopefully you guys could do yours right now. If not, you should have already done it and then just kind of using this video to guide you guys through your answers. But if you haven't done it, we'll just kind of work on it together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys, the form on my shared screen and then talk you through it. And then sometimes I'll kind of go back to the workbook to kind of go over it with you guys. So I'm going to share the screen. Okay. All right, so what can change the shape of land? So this whole topic unit, we've been talking about Earth's changes with landscape and what can change the shape of land. The biggest thing that we learned about is erosion. So I would say that wind and water are two things that can change the shape of land. So that's what I would have written for number one is wind and water. And that word that we've been talking about is erosion. We've been talking about that all of this unit and even a little bit of last unit too. Number two says, if you put pieces of chalk into a jar and shake the jar for 2 minutes, what will happen to the chalk? So this was the experiment that we did in class where we, took the chalk and we shook it with the pebbles, right? And when we shook it with the pebbles, the rock actually took little pieces of the chalk off it. It made like a dust. And then it actually took a lot more erosion, right? It took a lot more of the chalk away when we added water. So when we put in that little, remember in the little jar, we use like those cool little magnifying glasses, we put the chalk in there and the pebbles and we shook it really, really hard. I think we shook it for like 2 minutes. But we noticed that what happens was the chalk will break into small pieces. So that's kind of like an idea of what erosion kind of looks like when rocks or wind hit certain parts of the land and they like slowly start taking like little pieces away. It breaks. Okay. Number three says, what is a geologist? Now, let me see if I can kind of show you guys with your science books. Let me see. Let me really quickly stop sharing my screen so I can show you. If you guys, well, hopefully you guys should be using your science workbooks anyways, because I told you can use this for the test. But if you go to the back of the book, there's a science glossary. Usually if I'm asking you for the definition of a word, it's going to tell you the definition in the glossary. But if you go to, I think it's the index, yeah. There's something called an index, and it's all alphabetical order. And a lot of times when you go to the index, if you're looking for something in the workbook and you can't remember the page that it was on, you would go to the index, see if the word is there, and then it usually will tell you the page. So for number 3, it's asking what a geologist does. So geologist starts with a G. So I would go down and look. Geologist is actually the first thing, and it shows the number 23. So that's actually telling me that all I have to do is go to page 23 in my workbook. So I'm going to do that right now. You guys are using your workbook. Page 23. And then on page 23, it tells me all I need to know about a geologist, right? So that's something that you guys can do when you are doing the test, or even when you guys are doing a study guide, or just for future reference. Like that's the best thing you do is learn how to use a glossary and an index in the book. The glossary is kind of like a dictionary. It tells you the definition of something from that book. And then the index will give you direct location of where something is talked about, okay? So let me go back to sharing my screen. Oh my God, I'm so afraid that I'm gonna mess things up. Okay, so what is a geologist? Now, on page 23, it talks about a geologist, and this is my definition of a geologist. And if you would like to use my definition, I think it's gonna be helpful. I put a geologist is someone who studies Earth and its materials. So a geologist is someone that studies the Earth and its materials. And actually, if you look on page 23, that's the very first sentence. Okay. Number 4 says, what is weathering? Same thing. I can go to the back of my book. And when I go to the glossary, weathering is actually right there. So right here, I went to W because weathering starts with a W, and weathering is right here. When wind and water change the shape and size of rocks. Is that what I wrote? Yeah, and I even kind of made it a little simpler, which you guys can do that too. So that's the definition, and even if I want to learn about weathering, right here in the index, which will tell me what page to go to, sorry, weathering, it says page 12 to 13. So then I'm going to go back into my workbook. I'm going to find page 12, and it talks all about weathering right here. And it's perfect because it even has it highlighted for me, and it's in bold. The breaking down of rocks into smaller pieces is called weathering. And that's the definition that I use because I figured you guys would do the same thing. So I wrote that it's on page 12. And I wrote the definition of weathering is breaking down of rocks into smaller pieces. Okay. So hopefully you guys are starting to use that trend of using the index and the glossary because it really does help. I use the index all the time. It just is a fast way for me to find the answer. Number 5 says, what is erosion? And I wrote, if I looked in the book too, I wrote, when wind or water carry rocks and soil to a new place. That's called erosion. It's also changes to land. So I wrote 2 different definitions, and it's just so when if I was going to take my science test, the more information I've written down, the better I would probably do on the test because I have more information. So once again, I wrote, when wind or water carries rocks and soil to a new place. Also, when land changes, okay? So I wrote that down for number 5 for what is erosion. And remember, if I'm going too fast, this is a video, you guys can stop me, rewind me. You can stop and pause me and write stuff down, okay? The next question says, what is a flood? I put a flood is water that covers land that is usually dry, okay? So if I had a parking lot that's usually dry, when there's a flood on my parking lot, it's full of water. It's usually land that's dry, but it's flooded with water. The most important thing to note about flood that you're going to see on the test is flooding happens caused when a lot of rain falls quickly, okay? So flooding usually comes from rainfall, and it's when it rains a lot and really, really heavy. And we saw this like 2 weeks ago when there was parts of Cerritos, if you guys live in Cerritos, that were super flooded because it rained so hard, so fast, and it caused flooding around your neighborhoods. Okay. Number 7, what is an earthquake? And all of us have probably experienced an earthquake since we live in California. I put an earthquake is a shake in the Earth's crust or outer layer. You could just tell me it's when the Earth shakes. Same thing. But I wrote a shake in Earth's crust or outer layer. Okay. How long do most earthquakes last? They last 20 to 30 seconds. Very important that you remember the word seconds. On the test, it's going to ask you this question, but you need to remember, is it seconds, minutes, or hours? Remember, an earthquake is quick and fast. Seconds are quick and fast. Perfect, because we're talking about time this month, or this week, right? So earthquakes last about 20 to 30 seconds. Sorry, I apologize, 10 to 30 seconds long. I think I told you guys 20. So 10 to 30 seconds, okay? It's typical, 10 to 30 seconds. Number 9 says, what is a landslide? And the way that I remember landslide is when land slides. I mean, this is what we have when we have a compound word, two simple words that make up a word together. Landslide, it's when the land slides down, okay? Well, it's a sudden movement of soil or rock, but here's the important part. It must go from a high spot to a low spot. So you can tell me it's when land moves from higher ground to lower ground, okay? So that is a landslide. Sudden movement of soil or rock from higher land to lower ground. What is a volcano? A volcano is the opening of Earth's surface when melted rock or gases are forced out, okay? That's the total definition that I found in the book. You can also find volcanoes on page 39 from the index. I looked that up. When I looked up the definition in my workbook, that is where I got my definition from. I looked up, it's an opening in Earth's surface where melted rock or gases are forced out. Okay. Number 11, when volcanoes erupts or blows up, blank flows onto parts of Earth's landscape, okay? Magma is when it's inside the volcano, and when that magma comes out and hits the atmosphere or our oxygen, that's when it is considered lava. So when a volcano erupts or blows up, lava flows onto parts of Earth's landscape. Okay. Number 12, name 4 things that can cause very quick changes to the Earth. Well, here you go. You ready? Flooding, earthquakes, landslides, volcanoes. Once again, 12 says name 4 things that can cause very quick changes to the Earth's surface. Are you ready? 4 things. Flooding, earthquakes, landslides, volcanoes. And it's actually in your answers above yours. Okay. What does a, let's see, where was I? Oops. I don't know why it stopped sharing. Oops, sorry. Sorry, I don't know why I ended up stopped sharing. Let me go back to it. Okay. And I was on number 4 things. Number 13. Number 13, what does a geophysicist do? Okay, that's a long, fun word to say. Geophysicist do. So I might go to, if I go to my index, it tells me I can learn about a geophysicist on page 46. So I would go to page 46 and it would tell me that a geophysicist studies changes to the Earth's surface. So they're in charge of looking at how Earth changes and the surface part of Earth changes. Okay. What are natural resources? Things that come from Earth. That's basically it, things that come from Earth. And some of the natural resources that we've been talking about, and even in your ELA this week, water. From science, some of the natural resources that we've been talking about are plants and rocks. Okay, so it's something that comes from Earth that's not made by people. Automatically comes from the Earth, like wood, water, plants, rocks, all that fun stuff. Number 15 says, what does a civil engineer do? Now, if I go to my index, it tells me civil engineers is located on page 62 and page 63. And a civil engineer manages construction projects. So they're in charge of constructing things and kind of being in charge of it, right? Now, 16, a straw wattle. Now, what is a straw wattle? I said a straw wattle, and let me stop this share so I could show you guys. Next to this one, I would put page, because there's actually a couple pages where they talk about a straw wattle and even a video. If you go to your science workbook, did I go too far? Should have written down my pages first. Sorry, guys. Okay, here we go. A straw wattle is on page 52, right? These are all the straw wattles. We saw a little video on that. You also learned about a straw wattle on page, where are you? On page 64 and 65. Now, the way that I described a straw wattle, I said material used to soak up water to stop erosion. And that's kind of the most important part about the wattle, the straw wattle. It's used to soak up the water so it stops erosion. So if it's on a hill, like so, and the rain hits this, the rain is going to hit it, it's going to soak up the water, and then it's going to keep the land from sliding down. It's kind of like a little bit of a wall. It's stopping the land from sliding down, because that's a landslide, when land moves from a high place to a lower ground. So straw wattles, the most important thing is it's used to stop erosion. That's really important for your test, okay? And then the last question, number 17, says, when planning a windbreak to protect crops, what should you think about when you make a model? Now, if you notice, go to page 65 in your workbook. It's the exact same question. Okay, so you're going to see this exact question on the test. So what should you think about when you make a model to like represent a windbreak? Well, you need to figure out how far apart plants and the trees are going to be, because the trees make that wall. So you need to figure out how far apart they are so no wind gets through. You need to figure out where to plant the trees, right? You want to plant the trees wherever the wind is going to push through, right? I don't want to be on the opposite side of the wind. I need to figure out the shape of the trees. Do I want a tree that's like a shrub, or do I need something tall so it blocks the wind more? And you also need to think about the size of the tree. So the shape being round or small, sorry, and the shape would be the small, like the height and all that stuff, okay? So page 65, I would look that up. Now, I don't have this on your study guide, so if you're watching my video, I'm gonna give you guys a little bonus about what's on the test, okay? Please look at number 2 on page 65, okay? I believe, let me double check. Okay, so here's your bonus. Sorry, I just wanted to check, just check the test. They're going to show you this picture right here, okay? They're going to show you this picture, and they're going to say, what is this method called? What is this called? Well, if it's those trees blocking the wind, what is that called? It should be called a windbreak, right? This is called a windbreak. Now, they're not going to show this exact picture, but they're going to show something with these, the straw wattles. They're going to ask you what that method is called, okay? So let me double check. And it would be called the straw wattles, okay? So here's your little bonus for doing what you should be doing, which is watching my video. So I'm going to show you a picture of this and it's something similar to this, and you need to tell me what they're called. So right now on page 65 of your workbook, if I were you, I would take my pencil and I would circle that this is going to be on the test, and I'm going to circle that these are going to be on the test, and hopefully you guys filled them out, okay? I'm trying to think if there's anything else you need to know before I let you go. Me personally, I have to really look at, oh, I've got another one. They're going to show you a picture like this on the test, okay? And it's going to ask you what caused the ground to look like this, okay? And you guys pretty much answer this question. So that's why it's really important to be using your workbook to answer these test questions, because you've already done the work. All you have to do is just check your work and pretty much enter it in online. So what caused this land to break? An earthquake. We talked about that. It was an earthquake, okay? Each lesson in your science workbook, each lesson ended with like a test practice question, if you want to call it. So my suggestion is to put a note of pages that you want to review for the test. So what I would do is I would go to all your review pages. This is lesson 2 review. This is going to be on the test. These, I believe, are going to be on the test, right? Those are your review page. That was for page 48. If I go to lesson 1 review page, I don't think that they're going to ask this, but this is something you might want to check, and I believe they might ask you this question. So that's why I'm having us use this science workbook. If you basically did your classwork and you did it, what was it, like 3-4 weeks ago? If you did your science classwork, you're good. You pretty much have the answer to the test, okay? So like I said, I'm not going to post my answers because I verbally told you guys, and it was your responsibility to write it down. But if you guys study this, you're going to be fine. Please use your study guide for the test. Please use your workbook for the test. If there's any questions that are difficult, just let me know. If you guys want to spend, today's Tuesday, if you want to spend today studying for your science and then take your science test on Wednesday, totally do that. If you want to study on Tuesday and Wednesday and take your test on Thursday or Friday, totally do that. I'm going to leave it up to you. Keep in mind, though, if you decide to excuse me, if you decide to take your test on Friday, you have 4 ELA tests. So me personally, I probably wouldn't save all my tests to Friday. I have the hiccups. But then again, you don't have any new additional math work. You don't have any new additional science work. So I'm going to leave it up to you guys. You guys are independent. You guys can make these decisions on your own, but please make sure that you are doing the work, right? You need to make sure this is done, okay? Other than that, you guys will be totally fine. I have like the confidence in the world that you guys are gonna be really good. We get to start a whole new science topic next week. So you have the new workbooks, hopefully. But everything's gonna be good. All right, guys, good luck on your science test. You're gonna do great.